Hello and welcome to St. Francis de Sales Catholic Church and for our Alpha launch. This is just going to be a brief thing, just with me speaking for a few minutes and watching a little video and then coming back and learning about how to register for Alpha. So I'm going to welcome you all to this launch of our St. Francis Alpha online, and thank you for joining us today, both here in person and through our live stream. Did you know that over 29 million people across the world have already experienced Alpha? That's incredible in and of itself. This is because Alpha speaks to whoever you are and wherever you are in your life. It speaks to atheists, it speaks to agnostics, it speaks to people who think they're more Catholic than the Pope. And it speaks to everybody in between. And it's not just for Catholics in general. In fact, it's for all people who are seeking and inquiring or who are believing and just want more and who have questions and want to find a safe place to ask those questions and to grow in faith and experience something of God in a community of believers. So it truly is just this brilliant tool, I think, that has been able to reach so many people, and not just reach them, but then actually reach them and reach into their lives and to draw out that faith or to grow or mature that faith or to want the person, to help the person want to grow in faith more in experiences that go on after Alpha. And that's why the name is so key, Alpha. It's the first letter in the alphabet, the Greek alphabet, and it means a beginning. So that's what Alpha is for many of us. And for some of us, that's the beginning of faith or coming back to faith, or we've been in our faith for years upon years, and now we want to begin a new phase of that journey of faith and grow deeper and longer and wider in our faith. So guests will have the opportunity to ask real life questions in a safe place where they won't be judged and they have a chance to explore it. This is really what I love about Alpha the most. Here at St. Francis, as I mentioned at the Mass, we've had over 750 of our adults already go through Alpha. That's pretty incredible when you think about before COVID, we had about 1,000 people coming to Mass. And that was not just including adults, that was children. So the majority of our adults in our parish have actually gone through Alpha. And last spring we had over 100 guests experience Alpha online from here locally in New York and across our nation as parishioners reached out to children and grandchildren who are in Arizona or Texas or California and said, hey, join us and we can experience this together. It was a great way to bring friends and families and others who are in parts of the country where they don't get to experience this in their local church together. So thank you all for your willingness to engage, to inquire, and we'll have small groups that will be created that will allow for respectful, open dialogue and encourage one another along the Alpha experience. So if you're online right now and you're live streaming, either this live version or even the recorded version after it gets posted, you can just use the YouTube account that you're using your own as you're connected to our YouTube account. And if you've gone through Alpha, then tell us a little bit about, maybe in one sentence or two, your experience of Alpha and what you'd loved, because we'd love to hear from you. But if you're thinking about going through it, tell us what your hopes are. So you can just scroll down and fill those in right now if you'd like. Thanks to all of you for wondering what Alpha is about. You may have questions about our life, about your life, and I know I do, many people do. So what is going on in our world right now? Where is God in the midst of this? Who is God? Does he even exist? And does he love me? And what impact should that relationship with Christ be having upon my life? That and a host of other questions. But I have a question for all of you. So if God exists, and many of us believe that he does, then what, if you could ask one question of him, what would that question be? That you could ask one question of. And you may choose now to post your question in the comments. We'd love to see those questions and then tackle them as we go through Alpha. At Alpha, we connect and grow in community, a community of small groups as we move through the weeks together. For this session, we will utilize Zoom. There will be many tutorials for Zoom to help you navigate, and that's just at zoom.us, zoom.us. And they're so easy to follow. If you've never used Zoom, we use Zoom up and down our parish, so many of us are familiar with it. But if you've never done it, don't let that discourage you. Don't be afraid of it. And if you still can't figure it out, just reach out to us through our parish website, and we will be glad to take you through how to use Zoom. It's very easy. And you can relax and enjoy the Alpha experience in the comfort of your own home this semester. We also have, as I said, technology coaches who would like to give you personal guidance if you feel you need it. What does a typical Alpha session look like? Well, in this case, it'll be through Zoom. So we gather every week and we catch up on one another through an open Zoom where we can hear and talk with everyone. Then we'll break down into a larger group. We'll watch a video together, which will be streamed through Zoom, and that will cover our topics each week, like does God exist, and is Jesus the Son of God, and how can we prove it, and who's the Holy Spirit, and what's this thing called sin, and should I really be concerned about it, and is the church even relevant today? Each week we cover questions like that are common to people today. They're well done, they're worth discussing. So afterwards what we do is we get into Zoom groups, they're breakout groups, and Zoom allows us to go into smaller groups, and there will always be somebody who will be guiding you through that. So you'll see what I mean if you want to give us a try in the coming weeks. But here's the first video now. So enjoy that. It doesn't take long. It's about 15 minutes long or so. And then I'll come back just ever so briefly afterwards and talk to you about how to register. There will actually be a slide or two that I'm just going to take you through on how to register.
Can you get a mic check?
Hi, I'm Nicky. Welcome to Alpha. Life is busy. Every day we ask so many questions. What should I wear? What's the weather going to be like? What's happening today? How am I going to fit everything in? But then there are those bigger questions. Like, why am I here? Where am I heading? Is this it? Is there more to life than this? These are life's big questions, but there's rarely enough time to think them through properly.
We all have different perspectives on the meaning of life and faith, and Alpha is an opportunity to explore life's big questions.
This is a great place to come together and talk about them openly and honestly. I'm Gemma.
I'm Toby.
And this is Alpha.
I go on Google.
I definitely Google.
I go on Wikipedia.
Internet.
I scroll through all the different answers, and then I try and combine it, and then make my own kind of cornerstone.
Or smart friends.
I don't ask big life questions. It's too hard to answer.
Google or my grandmother.
I meditate or I read.
When I have a big life questions, I probably go to my family.
I haven't really had any mess of what to say.
To my mom or my dad, basically.
My mom or my dad, maybe my grand.
I get most of my answers from the library in any section there because I don't really trust the people that I'm around.
The key is always to yourself. You got to figure some things out for yourself.
If I'm confused, I go to him first. And he confuses me more.
But when it's something more personal, I try to find it within myself first.
Friends of mine told me that the first night they came to Alpha, they sat in their car for half an hour waiting and watching people going in, and eventually when they'd seen enough normal looking people going in, they thought they'd give it a try.
And one thing that might be going through your mind is, am I going to be the only one there who doesn't believe all this stuff, who's not a Christian, that doesn't go to church? Well, if that's you, then you're in the right place. Alpha is designed for people who wouldn't call themselves Christians or who are not regular churchgoers.
It might feel a bit strange to be discussing life and faith with people that you've never met before, but the best thing about Alpha is often the great friendships that are formed over the weeks.
For much of my life, I was not remotely interested in Christianity. In fact, I didn't think I'd ever come to something like Alpha. I was not brought up as a Christian. My father was a secular Jew. He was an agnostic, and my mother didn't go to church, and I had no interest at all in Christianity. First of all, I just thought it was so boring. Everything to me about church, Christianity, religion was just dull and dreary, and it kind of made me feel a little bit guilty. I didn't know why, but I just didn't want to have anything to do with it. And I also thought it was untrue. I thought I'd sort of thought it through, and I'd come up with these intellectual objections, and I called myself, very pretentiously, I called myself a logical determinist. And I quite enjoyed arguing with people who called themselves Christians. And at university, I had a bit of a reputation for being an argumentative atheist. And I also thought it was irrelevant to my life. I couldn't see how someone who'd lived 2,000 years ago, 2,000 miles away, could have any relevance to my life today. It just seemed outdated and irrelevant. But at the same time, looking back now, I would say something was missing. I say that because I don't think I was living in the moment. I was always looking forward to the next thing in life. So when I was at school, I was thinking, when I finish my exams, maybe that will be when I'm going to really start to enjoy life. I finished my exams, and then after about 3 weeks, I started to think, there's got to be more to life than this. And I thought, well, maybe when I've left school, that will be what life's all about. And then I left school, and after about 3 weeks, I started to think, there's got to be more to life than this. I thought, well, maybe the answer is to get a girlfriend. And somehow, I don't know how I managed it, but I managed to find a girlfriend. Again, after about 3 weeks, I started to think, there's got to be more to life than this. And basically, there was something missing. I was longing for more.
The actor Jim Carrey once said, "I wish everyone could get rich and famous and have everything they've ever dreamed of, so they would know that's not the answer." Some people dream of having their name in lights, of fame and fortune. Some people dream of finding happiness through relationships, careers, money, whatever it may be. But do you ever get that niggly feeling that as good as those things are, there must be more to life?
Yeah, all too often life just doesn't turn out the way we think it should. And even when it does and we achieve our wildest dreams, it's somehow never quite enough. It just doesn't satisfy. It's like there's something missing. The comedian and actor Russell Brand said, "Drugs and alcohol are not my problem. Reality is my problem. Drugs and alcohol are my solution to fill up a hole inside me." And Jesus said, "I am the bread of life." In other words, I'm the one who fulfills the longing that's deep inside every human heart. Jesus claimed to be the one person who can satisfy that spiritual hunger.
Freddie Mercury, the lead singer of the rock group Queen, had amassed a huge fortune and attracted millions of fans. But he admitted in an interview shortly before his death that he was desperately lonely. He said this, "You can have everything in the world and still be the loneliest man, and that's the most bitter type of loneliness. Success has brought me world idolization and millions of pounds, but it's prevented me from having the one thing we all need, a loving, ongoing relationship."
Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Ultimately, there's only one relationship that is totally loving and goes on forever, and that's a relationship with God. And Jesus said, "I am the way to that relationship."
Maybe money?
What makes me happy? Music. Music, ice cream, and cheese.
Sleep makes me happy. Going to the gym, seeing my friends, going to the pub, playing football.
Dogs.
Alcohol. Women. Pretty much.
The idea of life in general makes me happy.
Clothes. Women.
More to life than this.
That's a really good question.
I don't know, I can't tell you.
I think we're supposed to learn a couple of things. There's nothing more.
I'm still figuring that out, to be honest.
No. Let's live in the moment.
Absolutely. I strongly believe that there's more to life than this.
No idea. Sorry.
When I was about 17, I was sitting having a burger with two friends. and we were looking out the window and commenting on a few of the stores across the street, and I suddenly realised that I couldn't read any of the signs, even if I squinted. So I asked if I could borrow one of my friend's pair of glasses, and as soon as I put them on, I realised I could see everything, like colours, shapes, words. I was amazed at how everything was so clear. And I could see before, but now I could really see. And to me, that's the best way to describe the difference that Jesus makes. Jesus is the lens through which we see God, and he's also the lens by which we see the world in a totally different way.
Jesus said, I am the truth. Some people's response to a Christian might be, well, it's great for you, you found meaning and purpose in your life, but it's not for me. But when you think about it, that's not actually a logical position, because if Christianity is true, it's of vital importance to every one of us. And if it's not true, it's not great for us, because it means we're deluded. C.S. Lewis was one of the great intellectual giants of the 20th century, probably best known as the author of the Chronicles of Narnia. He said this: Christianity, if false, is of no importance, and if true, of infinite importance. The only thing it cannot be is moderately important. I come from a family of lawyers, so naturally I wanted to look at the original documents and sources. I never really looked at the evidence before, and I was astonished at how much evidence there is for the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. For me, it was through reading these documents that we find in the New Testament that I came to the conclusion, it's true. One of the last cases I did as a lawyer was in the Court of Appeal in front of Lord Denning, an absolutely brilliant mind, perhaps the greatest judge of the 20th century. He said on one occasion that his Bible was his most tattered book in his library. He'd examined the evidence really carefully, and he came to the conclusion, it's true. One former professor of history at Oxford University described the resurrection as the best attested fact in history. I hadn't realized how many of the pioneers of modern science were believers. Descartes, Newton, Kepler, Galileo, Locke, Copernicus, Faraday, Kelvin, Pasteur. Francis Collins, one of the greatest scientists of our time, was director of the Human Genome Project, mapping the 3 billion letters in the human DNA, considered by many to be the most significant scientific undertaking of our time. He describes how he encountered Jesus and came to believe in the truth of Christianity.
Well, in the home where I grew up, faith was not something that was talked about very much. My father was a professor of drama, my mother a playwright. When I went to college and those discussions in the dorm late at night about religion began to occur, I had no particular reason to attach value to a faith system. It had never been something I was familiar with or had internalized at all. And I assumed that any religious feelings that anyone held must be on the basis of some emotional experience, and I didn't trust those, or on the basis of some childhood indoctrination, which I felt I was fortunate to have missed. I loved the experience of learning about the human body and all of the components of that, and I particularly loved being introduced to genetics. But then I ended up in the medical school curriculum sitting at the bedside of patients with diseases. This was no longer an abstract study of molecules and organ systems. These were real people. And one afternoon, one of my patients, a wonderful elderly woman, much like a grandmother, who had very bad heart disease. She had a particularly bad episode of chest pain while I was with her. She got through it, and at the end of that, explained to me how her faith was the thing that helped her in that situation. She realized that the doctors around her weren't really giving her that much help, but her faith was. And after she finished her own very personal description of that faith, she turned to me, and I had been silent, and she looked at me quizzically, and she said, "What do you believe, doctor?" And ultimately, I had to admit to myself that her question had made me realize that I had arrived at an answer to the most important issue that we humans ever deal with. Is there a God? And I had arrived there without ever really looking at the evidence. And I was supposed to be a scientist. If there's one thing scientists claim they do, is to arrive at conclusions based upon evidence. And I hadn't taken the trouble to do that. I was greatly assisted by a pastor who lived down the road, who I went and asked about all this, and who gave me a copy of C.S. Lewis's wonderful book, Mere Christianity. Because here was an Oxford scholar, a prodigiously developed intellect, who had traveled the same path. Within those pages, I realized for the first time that one can come to belief on a rational basis, and that in fact, given the many pointers that one sees around oneself in terms of the universe and it having a beginning, and its fine-tuning in terms of the way in which all those constants that determine the behavior of matter and energy seem to have been set just in a certain very precise range to make life possible. And many other things, including my beloved mathematics and why they actually work anyway to describe the universe, something that makes you think the Creator must have been a mathematician. That brought me then to the person of Jesus Christ as a person who was historically extremely well documented. That was news to me. I thought Christ was as much myth as history, and I realized after reading more about it, this was a historical figure upon which we have a great deal of evidence for his existence and his teachings, and even his rising from the dead in a literal way. That day at my patient's bedside started a journey for me, a journey that I was reluctant to begin, but I felt I needed to, a journey that I thought would result in strengthening my atheism, but to my surprise resulted in my conversion.
There's a difference between knowing facts about someone and really knowing them personally. Now, I've known my husband Phil for 3 years now, but suppose if before we met, I found him on a website called The Amazing Man. Now, there's no doubt I would have looked at him and thought, okay, I'm intrigued. But what if each page was dedicated to his amazing abilities, his sparkling personality, his tender heart, his extraordinary intelligence, and his cooking abilities? Well, I would think, wow, he does sound like an amazing person. But that's head knowledge. But I also have the privilege of being married to him, and I know that he's an amazing person, which is knowledge that comes from experience of relationship, and that's heart knowledge.
When Jesus said, I am the truth, he was talking about more than just a kind of intellectual truth. The Hebrew understanding of truth was truth as experienced. And there's a big difference between a kind of intellectual knowledge and a personal knowledge, between your head and your heart. So when someone says, I know Jesus is the truth, they're not just talking about being convinced of the evidence, they're also talking about experiencing a relationship with the risen Jesus Christ. So Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and lastly he said, I am the life. I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. Jesus came to deal with the things in our lives that stop us from enjoying life to the full, the things that spoil our lives.
I hate shopping. I loathe it. I think I'm allergic to shopping. But occasionally my wife Pippa persuades me to go shopping, and just after Christmas it was the sales and she persuaded me to go shopping. We went into the shop and we bought this very nice new sweater, same colour as all my other sweaters, and we left the shop and we went to buy a present for her. And we went into this ghastly shop. It was so crowded, it was unbelievable. And even Pippa had had enough and she said, okay, we're leaving. So we went to leave, and as we left, the security alarm went off. And the security guys moved in very quickly, and they stopped us all from leaving. And like the crowd that was trying to leave was stopped, and the crowd that was trying to come in was stopped. And we were there right in the middle. The 6 of us who were going through the security at that one time were all taken off and sectioned off from all the rest. And they wanted to see which one of the 6 of us had set off the alarm. So they sent one of them through, and that was fine. They obviously hadn't set it off. Then they sent the next one through. They obviously hadn't set it off. Then the 3rd, then the 4th. None of them set it off. So it was left with Pippa and I were standing there, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm married to a shoplifter. It must be Pippa who's got set off the alarm. So they sent her through, and she didn't set it off. So I thought, oh my goodness, I've obviously got something. Someone must have planted something on me. I'm going to be arrested, I'm going to be sent to prison. All the crowd were watching, both sides. They were just watching this criminal who'd been caught going through. So they went through, and as I went through, the alarm went off. They took me to the side, they opened up my rucksack on my back, and there they found this sweater from the other shop with the tag still on it. I felt so guilty. That was like false guilt. I also sometimes experience true feelings of guilt because I do things that are not right, that are not good. And this is the wonderful news that God loves you and he loves me. God came in the person of his Son, Jesus Christ, to die for you and for me. And on the cross, he took all of your guilt, all of my guilt, everything you've ever done wrong, everything I've ever done wrong, said wrong, thought wrong, and he died in our place in order that we could be forgiven. And forgiveness, C.S. Lewis said, it's like a recording of our life wiped completely clean. And when we receive that forgiveness, we find life, and life in all its fullness. And that's what Jesus wants for you and for me. Life in all its fullness. Life at its very, very best.
I think for so many years, I always just strived to be strong in myself. And it was as if that all I needed was me and my buddies and, would be like invincible. But the truth is, none of us are. And I don't want to do this thing called life. I don't want to do it on my own. And it kind of feels like my longing for this light inside is now stronger than my fear of what others might think. And people often ask, well, doesn't that make faith like a crutch? And, well, maybe, but, what does a crutch do? A crutch helps you stand, and it makes you stronger. And in that case, sure, I need a bit of that. But especially when it's so much more than that. When this faith inside is also like a backbone, helping me stand tall and helping me be strong when I'm really up against it, facing those odds, whether it's on a mountain or stuck in some jungle or just dealing with the storms, with the storms of life. Sure, I need it. I need that. But at heart, my Christian faith says that I'm known to Christ, bought at a price, blessed with light. Faith says that we're loved, regardless of our mess, regardless of how many times we fall down, and that Jesus somehow picks me up. And sure, I'll reach out to that. Why wouldn't I?
I used to think Christianity was boring, untrue, and irrelevant. But when I read about Jesus, I realized he was anything but. Jesus said he's the way to God. He's the one who brings meaning and purpose to your life. He said he's the truth. He said he's the life, that true fulfillment is found in a relationship with God through him.
Alpha is a place where you can be yourself. You can say what you think and challenge everything. No question is too complex or too simple. And what your point of view is as important as anyone else's.
And over the weeks ahead, we are going on a journey together, an adventure to explore the questions of life, faith, and meaning. Think of it this way. If you live to be 70, you're going to spend 20 years and 3 months asleep, 10 years and 5 months watching TV, 5 years and 9 months in some form of transportation, 7 years and 6 months eating and drinking. You have approximately 570,000 hours left to live. So why not spend less than 24 of them asking life's biggest questions?
Welcome to Alpha.
Please feel free then to invite family and friends to join you to Alpha. And you can share the YouTube channel and link in this presentation as an invitation. In a moment, you'll see the link for our registration page on the slide, and the registration link is being posted. And you can post your comment in that comment section. So you can do that just by clicking now for that if you're on our live stream. Registering helps us connect you with a small group. a small group host, and you can let us know your day and your time that would work out for you. So we won't necessarily be doing this all on a Tuesday night, but if we get enough people who want to do it on a Wednesday, a Thursday, a Friday, and a night, and a Saturday morning, and a Sunday afternoon, that's fine for us. We'll find the host for each one of those groups. There's a place on the registration to tell us about your availability. We'll also do our best then to serve you and your needs as you note them. Please be sure you give us your contact information so we can send you the Zoom link directly. We'll also be emailing you then with some tips and some details to get you ready for the first gathering after this launch. You will hear from your host or helper later on this week, so be sure again that we have your contact information. So I'm extending this invitation to you right now. Our teams can't wait to dive into your questions and share together all Alpha has to offer us. During this time of social distancing, we can build a community of support and do that right from the comfort of our own homes. So invite someone you would like to encourage or bless and grow with you in the faith. And along those lines, when we did this last year, we did it during the quarantine period, so we only offered it online. And we, as I said, had about 150 people who went through it, but over half of them were not parishioners. What had happened was our own parishioners then reached out to sons and daughters and brothers and sisters and co-workers and said, why don't we do this together? So the other half were from all around the nation, so it makes for a great little eclectic gathering. Thank you for joining us this day in person and live for our live stream, and we hope to see you on Zoom next week. Now, also, if you're watching this live stream by recording, we have a couple hundred people who join us for the Mass, but then we have over 1,000 people who join us throughout the course of the week and worship at Mass through the live stream at a time that is good for them throughout the week. So if you're watching this as a recording, just follow everything I just said, and including the links that you just saw, and we'll be able to get you connected. If for some reason you watch it after this week, that's fine too. Just follow everything that you've seen in here, and you can join us in week 2, week 3. I think the cutoff is around that time, but feel free to join us, and we'll see you at Alpha through Zoom. Thanks, everyone.